So today in session, I am so thrilled to have an artist that has their debut EP out today, Tobias
Yeah,
Arbo. How are you and how are you feeling about it finally being out there in the world?
yeah, I'm so like I feel just liberated and really, really happy to finally have my first body of work like out in the world, like a full body of work, you know. It's just yeah, it's really exciting and yeah, you just start looking ahead and I just want to produce more, get more music out there.
So we just played the first track called Within. What can you tell us about Within?
It's um it's uh it's like it's like an attempt to reconnect with your inner child and looking back at the different persons you've been, also like the complications of growing up with siblings and like passing that border between a child and an adult, and how like in line with the overarching theme of the EP, which is the inner dialogue with oneself and like the conflict between the self and the superego, and trying to befriend that self and that superego, and like yeah, trying to form a functioning relationship with yourself, that can be even more complicated than the most complicated love relationship at many times, you know. So yeah, I would say Within is a like rediscovery of the childhood, and trying to connect it to your adulthood.
Very reflective and relatable. I think we're all still learning about each other ourselves, no matter what age we're at, because we're all growing and changing constantly.
Yeah.
How did you get into music? How did you realize you had an affinity and a voice?
I think it kind of started with I had this great music teacher as a 7-year-old, 8-year-old in like I don't know what you call the Swedish equivalent in English, but yeah, like preschool or yeah, and we did a musical, and I played Harry Potter. And I got to sing. He wrote music for the musical, and I had a couple of parts where I sang by myself, and I was really nervous, and I practiced a lot for that. And I don't know, that was like the first time I stood on a stage and I sang, and it felt just really cool and and exciting. And yeah, I think after that I just kind of started singing and playing a little bit of guitar. And then I guess it wasn't until I turned like 13, 14 that I started really playing a lot of guitar and singing a lot on my own. A lot of like ultimate guitar, trying to pick out chords and learning my favorite Bob Dylan songs. And because, I first I sang the songs, but then I wanted to be able to perform the songs myself without having to just sing along, and then everything just developed from there. And a lot of bedroom practicing. I didn't really go to I didn't really study music at that age, so for me it was like a really big leap going for like 40 minutes a week out in Vaxholm, which was the little town where I grew up, to going into Stockholm, starting high school there at this really fancy music school where people had been studying music theory since they were 9, since 4th grade. And yeah, and so yeah, that was quite a journey at first, trying to form your musical identity in those waters, like going from being one of the only ones doing music at home by yourself to being one of everyone. And everyone was, I mean, most of the people at my high school were a lot more educated than I was at first.
And of course, you're still residing in Stockholm. How's the music scene there supporting you?
It's been quite great during the past like weeks. I've gotten to go on national television for the first time this week, and yeah, I've been having a couple of interviews with some really nice and friendly journalists, and I've been playing a couple of venues here locally as well, with my amazing band. And yeah, it's a nice scene, but really small. That's the only thing. Like you're quite limited in the number of venues, and like small venues, and then you have all these big venues. But I feel like they're closing in the bigger venues as well. And yeah, I've been having two. Unfortunately, I had two bigger gigs booked during the past months, like pre-shows. One pre-show for Madison Cunningham, and then one pre-show for Amanda Tenfjord, but both were cancelled due to like last minute sickness, and yeah, so it's quite unfortunate. But yeah, I'm looking forward to more of those opportunities going forward now this spring.
And the session you recorded in a studio that you generally work out of, what can you tell us about that?
It's a really nice studio. It's like an old 17th century little red house on a little hill, and the like ceiling height is just above your head, and you have these you have a little chimney where you can make a little fire in the winter when it's all snowed in. And yeah, it's just a great place, cluttered with instruments of all sorts. And I record there together with two brothers, Linus and Hannes. And yeah, I think we have a really great relationship. They, you know, considering talking about the low ceiling height, I mean, the mental ceiling height working with two brothers, on the other hand, is really high, because like normally when you're in a creative process with people in a studio like that, it's you're especially at start, but you're scared to like step on people's toes, and yeah, the chemistry is, it can be quite fragile. But with two brothers, they are so direct with each other, so they kind of like set the standard, and that's really liberating, having that kind of directness available without any hard feelings, which makes it a lot easier to work together.
So what can you tell us about the debut EP?
It's I would say, like for me, the Powerline EP is a lot about my relationship to myself, like whether it is trying to confront and overcome the inner critic's limitations, or it is making up with your childhood self, or just a general relationship we're trying to improve with ourselves. It's a lot about that, the different conversations we have with ourselves, and as like a kind of conclusion of that, the title track Powerlines, which is the last track on the EP, is written, for me, it's written from the perspective of a forgiveness letter, where I kind of like, yeah, I felt like I really it's hard to do because you don't really have a channel for it. But I felt the need to like apologize to myself, because you can sometimes you get glimpses, like you make up your own realities, and you kind of become blind to like the obstacles you put up for yourself. But sometimes you get glimpses of like how bizarre your relationship is. And one shortcut for me was watching all of these childhood videos of myself in relation to the music video for Within. Like watching a different version of yourself, you know that that's you, but you can't really relate to that person being you because it was such a long time ago. And then you see all these clips and you just feel like, how do I go around harassing this person in my head over putting all these demands and all of these like unreasonable, like negative images of what I do. I do all these things to that person. That's the same person. And, that kind of glimpse, those kind of glimpses are worth latching onto a bit and trying to, because in those windows, it feels like you have a better chance at altering that negative relationship to yourself. And so yeah, Powerlines, the title track, is kind of about that, trying to forgive yourself while also asking yourself for forgiveness.
Beautiful sentiment. And you got somebody very impressive in to mix the record, didn't you, when the production had finished? Who were you working with, and how did that come about?
I'm working with Zach Hansen, who's an American producer that I've just been in love with this work since he started working with Bon Iver many years ago, and yeah, I started sending him some demos of songs just randomly, and like maybe 6 years ago or something, 5 years ago, and he actually replied, which I was kind of astonished about. Like, yeah, and we, yeah, I sent him, like a year later, I sent him some other demos, and just I got this reply like, yeah, it would be. He said that he really liked the music and that it would be fun to work in the future. And I was just like, yeah, that's something he's saying to be nice. And yeah, but then when I actually felt like I found these kind of found my musical identity by starting working with these two brothers that I mentioned previously. I got a lot more confident, and actually reached out to him on a more serious note, asking him if he wanted to be involved in mixing the EP. And then he was up for it. And then we had a couple of Zooms, and yeah, I just feel it's so nice having him as like that final objective hand that can come in after we've been just bathing in the music, becoming kind of like blind to our object, like when our objectivity is shrouded after having worked on it for day after day, and he can just come in with a fresh perspective, maybe having some ideas about the productions, and then after that being able to just tie everything together. That feels really, really amazing to have that resource in him.
And I have to talk to you about the artwork as well, because every photo I've seen of you is like, it's got numerous levels. There's almost like that exposure of two images in one, and I see that on the EP artwork as well. Who have you been working with, and why is it important to have this kind of dynamic to your visual part of the music?
Yeah, for me, that visual part, I really wanted to reflect the duality that I was talking about previously, like that kind of duality between like the self and the super, like that we're more than one layer basically within ourselves. And I wanted to visualize that with both the artwork, like the EP artwork, where these two silhouettes are facing each other, and like how difficult that is in many ways, if you are to interpret it as facing yourself in different ways. And the artist that I'm working with is a photographer called Olof Grind, that's who's also living here in Stockholm and has become a great friend of mine. And he's just such an amazing photographer and artist, and he's worked with like doing really cool things with. He did like the latest artwork for Phoebe Bridgers' album Punisher and all of her like press photos, and he's doing things with First Aid Kit and many other artists and bands that I really look up to. And he's also been a great, like I said, a great friend in the process, like listening to the music, and just being able to have someone also outside of the production process that can also be you can bounce ideas off of, just without any presumptions. That's really nice. And another person that I really want to mention is my friend Victor Spasov, who's one of the songwriters and the guitarist in the band Girl Scout that have been playing a lot around Europe for the past year. And he's also been like one of the greatest assets for me through my songwriting. And I've also been writing a couple of songs on their debut EP, which you should really listen to. It's a great record, I think, not just because I've written some songs on it, but going back to Olaf, he's a great photographer. It's really inspiring to work with him.
The EP is out there right now. If you want to keep an eye on finding out where you're playing live, what's the best place to go and follow your news updates?
Instagram is where I post things first, and that's where I would go. You can just follow me on at Tobias Arbo, and yeah, I'll be giving updates there.
What can you tell us about Carousel?
Carousel is written as a kind of complicated love relationship, but as with the theme of the EP, it's for me, it's written through the eyes of like my relationship to myself. It's about like these endless dialogues that we have within each other, and all these patterns that we establish that are so hard to break, so difficult to break, and how the scary thing about these patterns, in my opinion, are that how they become invisible when you've have them going around for enough of a time. And yeah, that's kind of like the carousel, the idea behind the title name as well for me, like how you're spinning around in these patterns until you can't see them anymore.